Hi, this is Kathy Goodwin, and today I want to talk about a topic that we rarely focus on, which is what to do when you have a career crisis. Generally, what I recommend is if you're facing a crisis or think you might have a crisis, the most important advice is to move fast. A career crisis might be a performance review, either really negative or surprising, and sometimes even a surprisingly good performance review, because that can trigger expectations and it might mean something is happening down the pike. A job offer that you didn't expect, or one that you are expecting, or maybe you have competing job offers and you have a deadline and you have to make a decision quickly. Any change of workplace conditions that may trigger a red flag for you. For example, a new boss often means that something different is going to happen. You have to get along with someone new, you have new processes, possibly a whole new office culture. Moving to a new city, whether you're initiating a move yourself or whether you're being transferred, often comes as a crisis to many people. And finally, a new assignment or new responsibilities. Maybe you're being asked to take on a lot more than you did before, or maybe you're being asked to take on responsibilities at a different level. Maybe someone's out of the office and you're filling in for them. That may be a good thing, or it may mean that you have to take certain steps to protect yourself. The key is to respond quickly. I don't mean rush out there and take action, but be aware that something's going on. It's easy to do nothing because most people don't know what to do. I mean, usually a crisis by definition is something that is unexpected. It's probably the first time in your life you ever were faced with this kind of situation. So why would you know what to do? You might not recognize the impact of what's happening. I get this a lot when clients call me about performance reviews. And recently I had a couple clients from totally different parts of the country, different fields, calling about performance reviews. In both cases, they had gotten the reviews months earlier, but they didn't realize that it was serious. They had gotten, in one case, a really devastating review, and in one case, one that was, just not as good as she was expecting. And in both cases, by waiting, they gave up a lot of opportunities. They just didn't realize that if they did nothing in a few months, they might be out of a job. And finally, other things are going on. I mean, people have lives. So maybe you get hit with a job offer at a time when your child is having trouble in school. Or maybe you're getting hit with a bad review at the time when you've got a sick family member to deal with. Or any of these things can happen. So it's very easy to say, okay, I just put it on the back burner. But the price of waiting too long can be great. For one thing, you lose opportunities the longer you wait, because if you take action earlier, you might be able to move into something very quickly. You lose options. If you move quickly, a lot of times you have negotiating power. You have time to research. You have time to think about what's going on and identify different places you can go and maybe a whole nother set of choices. Finally, it puts you in a one-down position. There's just no denying that if you wait too long, at some point the choice is being made for you, and then you're not the person in charge of your own career. So what I recommend is get an outside opinion. Most people start with a friend or family member, and that can be helpful if they can be objective. But I'm a little biased. Of course, I recommend working with a professional coach or consultant because they're familiar with different areas in the field and they know what's going on. Legal financial advice may be essential. For instance, I met someone at a networking event who was a lawyer. One of her clients was a high official in a bank, and one day the FBI came calling on him. So he came home and told his wife, this is no big deal. I just answered some questions. But she was a lawyer. She said, oh no, I'm getting you a lawyer. So she did. She found a white-collar criminal defense attorney. This guy was like, I'm not a criminal. I haven't done anything. But the attorney was able to call the FBI and head off any possible action before it happened, because when they start probing, a lot of times they're looking for something and they'll keep going till they find something. And this can happen whether it's a government agency or your own internal investigation. So at the earliest stage, anything like that, it's best to get advice. You may be getting a bizarre accusation, and I'm using the term bizarre because it's kind of an umbrella word. I don't know what else to call it. I once had a client who talked to me about career change, and when we were talking about a previous job, she said, oh, well, I can't do anything because they accused me of embezzlement. And I was like, almost fell off my chair. Like, what? Well, it was bizarre, but she said, well, I didn't get a lawyer, or I couldn't afford a lawyer. Like, you've got to afford a lawyer. I mean, something's weird here. But the bottom line is, if you get accused of something, whether it's minor, maybe they're starting to accuse you of not showing up on time for meetings, and you are on time for meetings, that's a sign something really strange is happening. And of course, it could be much bigger. You might be accused of embezzlement or theft or any number of things. Things like that do happen, not very frequently, but I have heard of low-end bizarre accusations pretty often. So be aware. In that case, you need to be aware that you might need legal advice, and that's where actually if you talk to a consultant, they usually have a sense for what you need, even if they're not lawyers. Finally, you may have to make a decision that's going to have a huge financial impact on your life. Maybe you're thinking about quitting your job, or maybe you are deciding how to respond to a performance review, and you're saying, the way it looks, things are going south. I might do better just to negotiate a termination settlement right now. That's going to have an impact on your life, and you need to meet with a professional financial advisor. I'm not a financial advisor or a lawyer. Most career coaches are not, but hopefully you'll work with someone who will say, no, this calls for an objective assessment of your financial situation. You need to know how long you can go without being employed before you'll hit a crisis, or a different kind of crisis, I should say. Well, what does an outside professional do? An outside professional will give you perspective. A lot of times when I work with clients, they think they've got a real disaster and their whole life or career is coming to an end, and a lot of times it's a matter of perspective. They may be actually on the path to something really good. They will help you recognize the impact. A lot of times, someone who talks to people in these situations every day will have a sense of what's serious and what isn't. That's just a matter of experience. It's not because they're necessarily more brilliant or smarter than you are. It just means that they've heard a lot of stories, and they often get a sixth sense or just an insight into what's important. And they may say, this is something you really need to do something about, or they may say, this is not something that's going to make a big difference. And of course, you have to decide if you agree with that assessment, but usually they have some perspective for you. And finally, help you identify resources. A lot of times that you may not realize that what you need is a financial advisor, not a career coach, or you may need a lawyer and not a career coach. Most career consultants will be able to suggest other resources, even if they don't have names of resources to suggest to you. They'll say this is what you need and this is who you should look for. And that can be really critical. And that's why a lot of times people prefer to pay an outside professional who will be objective rather than a family member. And besides, an outside professional won't say, I'm tired of hearing this. Can't you just deal? Which a lot of times family members and friends will say to you. They will also help you plan for the future. That's something that's really important, because a lot of times what's important in a crisis is not spending a lot of time on the crisis. It's like putting this in perspective and moving on. A lot of times when you have a bad performance review, the question is not, how should I deal with it? I mean, yes, you have to do something about it, but the way you deal with it is going to be influenced by what you're going to do next. So a lot of times the real question is not, what's wrong with this job? How can I keep it? But where do I really want to be in 5 years? The good news, and there is good news, is you often achieve a far better outcome than you expected after a crisis, and you're far more likely to get a good to great outcome when you respond quickly. If you'd like to work with me, I have some resources here at my website. You can work with me on a consultation. I have a special type of consultation tailored to performance reviews, but of course we can use our consultation for any crisis or even a non-crisis, any general planning setting. And I have an ebook, 10 Steps to Deal with a Bad Performance Review, that you can get at this location. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you again on a future video. I wish you the very best of luck with your career and the greatest success in your life.